Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Kayla and this is Dark Tales from the Road. Hey friends, thank you so much for joining me today. It is going to be a great day, you guys. I have some huge news. I got a new computer. My old one, poor girl, but I finally got a new one. It was much needed, and it's so refreshing. I got a Mac, love Macs, and it's just so nice. It's my first time recording on it, but it's fast, it's so effective. It's just everything I needed to make this podcast perfect. So, anyways, yeah, big news. I got a computer. I'm up in Montana. It's snowing. Well, not right now, but it snowed through the weekend. We got a good couple inches on the ground right now. And I have a very long driveway. So thank goodness my husband talked me into him getting a blade for our four-wheelers because I don't know what we would have done. I tried to do it and I'm like, oh God, like my back hurts from just trying to do a little bit of our driveway yesterday. But yeah, I hope you guys are all having good weather. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely winter is here in Montana, and this wasn't the first time it has snowed. It's snowed a lot. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't think I have any other announcements. So I am pumped beyond belief for this subject. I've wanted to do it for so long because it is my favorite story. So many podcasts have done it, but every podcast has done it correctly, has done it super creepily like it's supposed to be, and I just had to do it. I hope I do justice for the other podcasts, but we are going to Abilene, Texas to discover the black-eyed children. So it originated in Abilene. That's kind of where all the stories started, but it is widespread throughout the United States and into Europe, all of that. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you more than anything. And if you want to follow me, I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook page, I have a Twitter, a TikTok, a YouTube. All of it is Dark Tales from the Road. So you can follow me there if you'd like to contribute and help me pay off my computer that I just bought. I have a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee. So yeah, if you're new here. And then my format's a little different than other podcasts because I love history. I like to know more about places. You know, this is started in Abilene, Texas. Well, I've never been to Abilene. I don't know that much about it, or Texas. So I like to start with history. I'm going to start with Texas history, and it's short. It's really not long, guys. My earlier episodes went pretty long, but I promise these are a lot shorter. I'm going to talk about Texas for a little bit, just some fun facts, and I'm going to talk about Abilene for a little bit also. Then we are going to dive into the black-eyed children. I apologize if this is going to be a long episode. This is my favorite. I'm passionate about this episode. So let's get started so we don't waste any time. So we're going to explore Texas. So I've only been to the Houston airport or one of the other airports. I've never actually left an airport in Texas to go anywhere, but I would love to go to like Austin. That's only, I don't know where else, but so about Texas. So the Texas began a long time ago, guys, from the first like Spanish conquistadors that came into North America, and they came up into what is now Texas in 1519. How crazy is that? So they really came into that region and discovered that it was very much occupied by tons of Native American tribes. So the name Texas is from a word in the Catadone language. It says Catadone language of the Hassani, if that means anything to you guys. So it's derived from a word Tesha, I think is how you say it, and it means friends or allies. And they said that Native Americans, their ancestors there had been there for more than 10,000 years from what they have discovered in that area of literally prehistoric Neanderthals. And they found a woman. So moving on, Mexico won its independence from Spain in 1821. And then after that is when Texas declared its independency from Mexico and became the Republic of Texas. So that area was huge for cotton plantations. It was very rich land, and then a lot of ranching, and then like tens of thousands of immigrants came into Texas from other parts of the US and Germany as well. So then in 1845, Texas joined the United States and became the 28th state. So like I said earlier, Texas was known for their cotton ranching and farming, and that was a huge part of their economy at the time. And then came along the railroad, construction, and timber going through that area. In 1901, they actually discovered petroleum, and that area became the most productive oil well that literally the world had ever seen. So that wave of oil discovery that was happening, it became known as the Texas oil boom, and it literally transformed Texas. You know, the economy, everything is huge with oil. Some interesting facts about Texas. So the Johnson Space Center in Houston was actually called the Manned Spacecraft Center, and it was built in 1961. Now it's the site of mission control for all the flights to space. And then we should all know this, but July 20th, 1969, the flight controllers there oversaw Apollo 11, which landed Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. The Astrodome in Houston is known as the eighth wonder of the world. I've actually said that on a couple different episodes for different things. But it was the first domed stadium that was built in 1965. So many things take place there, from sporting events, concerts, rodeos, different entertainment. But it was actually used in 2005 as a shelter for Hurricane Katrina evacuees also. During Texas's war from independence from Mexico, there were 200 volunteers who volunteered to defend a fort and a former mission, which is known as the Alamo. And that is near San Antonio, because it was being attacked by large forces of Mexican troops. This began in 1836, and February 23rd lasted 13 days before the Mexican forces were able to break through the courtyard and actually killed most of those Texans that were there. And that actually included Davy Crockett, who we know as this huge frontiersman. He was actually a former congressman from Texas. So that's a little bit about the Alamo. I actually didn't really know that. I might have. I don't know. In 1900, the date 1900, in September 8th, a Category 4 hurricane hit Galveston, Texas. The winds were up to 130 miles per hour, and it killed 8,000 people and literally just destroyed the city. And it actually still remains as the deadliest natural disaster in the U.S. history. And lastly here, again, we should all know this, but I'll bring it up. So in Dallas, November 22nd, 1963, in an open convertible traveling down the roads of Dallas, President JFK was shot and killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. And then 2 hours later, Vice President Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as the 36th president when he was aboard Air Force One. I also put that in there because I watch a lot of stuff about conspiracy theories. There are some crazy ones about JFK. There's a lot of ones about the Illuminati and all those different kinds of why he was shot, who shot him. Are they trying to cover something up? Are they trying to get rid of him? And there's a ton of conspiracies about, actors and leaders who have all of a sudden died. Like Anne Heche is a huge conspiracy theory about them speaking out and then they were taken out because of their views and stuff. So it's just crazy. I believe that he was killed by Lee Harvey, but there are a lot of crazy things going on with that. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, there's a lot with, JFK. And actually, you can see autopsy pictures of JFK and his head. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, but I have seen them. So now we're going to transition into the city of Abilene. For Abilene, I actually got a couple different sources that explain the name of Abilene. So one was it means grassy plains, and it came from the Bible in the 3rd chapter of Luke, and it was a name of a Mid-East tetrarchy. And then another one says that when it was founded in 1881, it was named after a famous cattle shipping center in Abilene, Kansas. So going back into 1881 real quick, there was a town lot auction, and that is literally where Abilene started. And during that land auction, because 317 lots were sold for the sum of $51,000. So in today's money, that would be about $1.5 million for all those 317 lots. So when you divide the 1.5 million by 317, that means each lot in today's money would have been about $4,700. That is insane. And I don't know how big the lots were, but cheap, especially for back then. Because then if you do 51,000 divided by 317, it's $160 a lot. Very crazy. And then in 1883, the city was incorporated and it blew up fast. All of a sudden it has newspapers, churches, and public schools. And a little tidbit, in 1969, a high school and an elementary school named Woodson, they were for Black students only, and they closed in that city because of the integration of the school system. And actually, more than 10 years after the Supreme Court ruling on Brown versus Board of Education, they finally said that segregation of public schools was unconstitutional. So the Brown versus Board was in 1954, and Abilene, Texas did not recognize that in their all-black schools until 1969. I think that is pretty crazy. So I'm ready. Are you guys ready? I'm ready to dive into the Black-Eyed Children. I can't stand it anymore. I'm so pumped. So I'm going to read this word for word because they wrote it beautifully and it sounds great. It is a news article from tbsnews.net, and the writer is Mariah Mosen, and this was in March of 2020 that she wrote this. So I'm going to read it word for word because she did an amazing job. So it says, they might knock on your door on a late wintry night. You may see them approaching your car while you are waiting at the signal or a gas station. It might seem like they need help, or they might just stand still for no reason. When they show up at the doors of unsuspecting residents and ask, in breathless and monotone voices, to use the bathroom, make a phone call, get a ride, or grab something to eat. They have very limited vocabulary and can only say just a few sentences, and they will not answer any questions. Outside, they will be playing together, throwing a ball or playing a game, almost to lure you in to feel safe, to watch them, and then sense you looking at them, and they will drop what they're doing and turn their heads to look at you. These children do not look threatening. They would want to get into your house or your car. They will persist. Suddenly, you will notice something is not right about these children. Their eyes, pure black from lid to lid, dead black orbs devoid of sclera or iris will chill up your spine. You have finally come across the black-eyed children. Black-eyed children or black-eyed kids is an urban legend of paranormal creatures that resemble children between ages 6 and 16. These creatures with pale skin and black eyes have reportedly been seen hitchhiking, panhandling, or at the doorsteps of residential homes. A dozen stories keep circulating, all following a similar pattern. Kids with eyes completely blacked out appear at people's home or vehicle, knock on the door, and then insist on getting inside. Anyone who encountered them has almost immediately felt an overwhelming sense of dread. They also get to the point where they demand entry and stress they need to come in. They cannot enter without verbal confirmation. Besides blacked out eyes, these children typically appear normal. Sometimes their attire seems outdated. They have old-fashioned expressions too. Sometimes before you'll see them, you'll be drawn to the door of a window and make you look out to see them. They use telepathy or hypnosis and can manipulate the energy around them to mess with emotions and do whatever they want to pull you in. They also seem to have a connection to electricity or radioactive energy by flicking the lights or having power outages. And in her article, she had a quick story. It says, a man woke up in the middle of the night and felt like he had to go to his door. No idea why. Looked through the peephole. There were two boys looking down. Looked up and he could see their eyes. Before he saw their eyes, they asked politely to come in. Quote, can we use your telegraph? Another example is, can I enter the premises? So yeah, that was a quick article there. And so now I want to, I'm going to step into some conspiracy theories about what people believe these black-eyed children are. And then we're going to go into some stories. So there is this whole theory about how they came about. And there is this story from a man, a Texas man named Brian Bethel, who wrote about an alleged encounter with black-eyed children. And from there, it kind of spiraled into, people seeing them more and more. Like at first it was like a creepypasta, like just a story. But a lot of people believe it to be true. And then all of a sudden these different encounters start happening. So one of the theories about this is, I love these theories. These theories, you guys, they're awesome. So they theorize that black-eyed children are aliens trying to reach out to Earth, that they are like alien human hybrids. So their eyes are similar to aliens, and they have that pale skin and the electricity and radiation control and being able to manipulate what's around them. And like aliens, they can cause radioactive exposure symptoms to the victims when they're able to get into their house. And it's called moon burn syndrome. So it's like symptoms of radiation poisoning, and they can't explain it. It's crazy. And they said, I just love this theory because it's like so way out there. But they said that it's similar to being abducted or seeing a UFO, because then you are exposed to the radiation and being poisoned. And in similar cases, the black-eyed children cause those symptoms when they're able to get inside your house. Like there was a story about a very, very healthy grown man. Like think of Chris Traeger in Parks and Rec, crazy healthy, and he let them in. And then later that month, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer and died 6 months later. So, even crazy healthy people, something happens to them and, they die. But that story is very questioning for a lot of people who, like in the BEK, the black-eyed or BEC, the Black-Eyed Children community. So with the aliens, they believe that they're not mating with humans and the children are not being bred. Like when you're being abducted, if you get assaulted, you're not going to be pregnant with a black-eyed child. They believe that they were created in an alien lab, with what the aliens know about us. So that's why they seem so awkward, especially talking. They're trying to like mimic us to where they're like trying to fit in, trying to get into your house, but it's awkward. They're not getting the vocabulary correct, or things like that. So the black-eyed children can be very polite, but they have a massive creepiness to them. And they said that like the alien race may actually see these black-eyed children as an accurate attempt at being a human and recognizing courtesy. They also say with the alien part that they are not actually invading Earth, that the alien population is just trying to assimilate with us, without us knowing that they are doing that. And so they send like kids to be spies, to look around people's houses, see how people live, and try to mimic that. There was a woman who was actually abducted to a UFO. And she said that when she was laying on like the slab that they put her on, she started looking around and she saw black-eyed humans like in tanks, like incubating like a child. And she could understand what the aliens were saying, and they said that they were the children of the future. Believe what you would like. But these are just fun stuff that I found. And you know what? Hey, these could be actually true. So don't judge anyone. Just go with it. So another theory that comes from demonologists, they believe that the children are the devil himself. And if you let them in your house, you're allowing the devil to enter your life. So they will, enter your home. They'll want to call their parents, and they use that as an excuse to get into your home. But as soon as they make eye contact with you and you see those black eyes, it's like a sinister plot starts going in the story of them and you and your future. So don't let the devil in, guys. There was a medium that actually had an encounter with a black-eyed child, and she said that she was able to speak to them, that they are spirits of children that died during the Victorian era of diphtheria. And one of the big symptoms of it is paralysis of the eyes, and it'll make their eyes look dark and sunken in. So there's another theory. There's quite a few theories, guys. So another one is them being ghosts. In 2014, a woman in England heard a child screaming. She was with her child playing around, and she couldn't see where it was coming from. She couldn't see anyone screaming. So she started looking around, and she found this little girl standing, and she had an old-fashioned, like, they described it as a Mennonite dress. And so she approaches her and asks if she's okay. And the girl has her hands over her eyes. Like she wasn't, but this is the creepy part. Like she wasn't crying, but it's like she was excitedly waiting for something. Like happily, and playing like peekaboo, and just like, it wasn't her sad. It was her like giggling with her eyes closed. And so the woman asked again, are you okay? What do you need? And the child took her hands down, and she said there were no eyes, just massive black holes. So she said she jumped back, grabbed her daughter and took off. So, so scared. So, this woman is telling her family about it, and she's telling her aunt. And she admits, I saw the exact same girl in that exact same spot 30 years earlier in 1984. So, with the ghostly theory, they think that these children can become connected to a family and actually haunt the family throughout the years. Super, super creepy. So there also they could be dark fairies, which is an Irish folklore. And I guess that's a very big theory out there. I didn't find a lot on it, but whenever I found it, they were like, it's a huge theory. I'm like, okay. And they also could be vampires because they have to be welcomed into a home. So those are some of the conspiracy theories around what these kids actually are. So here's kind of how they kind of came into existence, and we're getting into the stories, guys, because they're so creepy and I'm pumped. I have a lot of stories. So people claim that these children have existed since the 80s, but like I talked about earlier, there was a 1996 post by a man named Brian Bethel in Abilene, Texas, and he wrote about his encounter. So I wanted to go over Brian's story first so you can get a general idea of how things started. So, in Brian's story, he says, quote, "They generally appear lost and helpless before your house or car, making an incessant request to be let in. For some reason, witnesses report feeling an inexplicable fear in their vicinity, even before noticing their diabolic eyes, and are mostly found fleeing the scene immediately. The children allegedly use some low-level hypnotism, for people often report unconsciously letting them into their property right before noticing their eyes and thereby fleeing." So that's just a little tidbit from Brian. So here is his story. So Brian, I've heard different places where he was a veteran journalist, he was a columnist at a newspaper, or he was a blogger. So huge range there. And so he wrote his accounts of an encounter, and it was in 1996, and it's known as like the first Black-Eyed Children encounter on record. So in 1996, spring or summer evening, somewhere around there, Brian was making this shows its age, making his way to his internet service provider, their office, which was in Abilene, Texas, to pay off his bills. So that's what we did, guys. Like internet bills, like paying your bill on the internet didn't happen. You had to mail it in with a check, or you could go in. It was in the evening, so the place was already closed. So it was like a drop-off slot that he could put it in. So you guys, you youngins don't understand. You don't understand. Anyways, I was 9 in 1996, so I wasn't paying bills yet. But anyway, so he's writing out his check. He's in a parking lot of a movie theater, so just like the big lights, it's not super bright. And he was again going to drop it off in the little slot. But this turned out for him to be like the most frightening night of his life. So all of a sudden, he's sitting in his car. Two boys come over, about, he guessed, ages 9 and 12. And all of a sudden, he said, quote, "I was immediately grabbed by an incomprehensible, soul-racking fear." And he said they were using energy to manipulate him and give him this sense of doom. So the first boy starts talking, and he explains that the two of them have come to watch the premiere of Mortal Kombat. Again, this is showing its age, but Mortal Kombat is the best. At the nearby theater. But they had forgotten their money at their mom's house, and they asked him for a ride to their mother's house to fetch their money to come back to the theater. So while this conversation is going on, Brian describes that he is having this just massive irrational fear of what's happening. So scared in the moment. So he's listening to them, but he's kind of looking around, and there's the big sign, and a lot of the theaters don't have it anymore, but the big sign, and it tells you the showing times and everything like that. And he noticed that the last showing of Mortal Kombat was already happening. Like, it was in the middle of the movie. So he asked them why. And the boy, again, like we talked about, didn't really answer it correctly. He all of a sudden is trying to convince him with assurances. Like, Brian says this: they could try to convince me it wouldn't take long. They were just two little kids and they didn't have a gun or anything. Which, you don't know that, Brian. Anyways, so Brian had this massive feeling, and he actually opened his car door. And then he broke vision. Like, it says he broke vision with the boy. And that's when he came to notice his black eyes. So, like, he was looking at them, but he was like entranced. So once he's out of that, he notices those eyes. So he is staring directly into these black-eyed children. And he described it as, quote, the sort of eyes one sees these days, or aliens, or bargain basement vampires on late night TV. Soulless orbs like two great swaths of a starless night. So he's trying to keep his composure, and he is coming up with excuse after excuse to tell these kids no. Then all of a sudden, the boy got angry and just lashed out, especially because Brian looked them in the eyes. That's when things get real. And the boy started banging on his car windows. And he said, quote, we can't get in unless you say it's okay. Let us in. And he was saying it over and over and over again. And so Brian was done. He pulled his car into gear and he drove off as fast as he could. And so he pops up, looks in the rearview mirror, and the kids have just completely vanished within seconds. So with this, that's when his story started to spread. I had heard that he had posted it in like a paranormal forum group where it was only like paranormal professionals could weigh in on what happened. But also people thinking it's a creepypasta, it's just a story, it's nothing. And so Brian Bethel starts pushing this story around. He began sending emails to people he trusted about his experience, and the story just took off all over the internet. And that story now had been shared among thousands of people. And that is what made black-eyed children become this modern paranormal phenomenon. There is some people that really dove into this to almost make him look as though this is all made up. He's just trying to manipulate the people. Because 1 month earlier, he had wrote a blog post about creating an entity with thought. So you think of Bigfoot enough, you put it out in existence. So like a great example is a tulpa. It's actually an apparition that is concocted by your own mind and your own energy. You swear you saw something, it's real, Bigfoot's real, tulpa's real, if that makes sense. And so Brian said, quote, can we create something like Bloody Mary by collective force of will? So then his black-eyed children story comes out 1 month later. And then people are thinking that he actually did this as an experiment so that everyone will now think and manifest that black-eyed children actually exist. So that's very interesting to think about, is a lot of his theories about manifesting with your mind and then trying to see if I do this story, are more going to start popping up? Are people going to think, you know, about what's happening? So I am there. I have a lot of stories, so I really want to get to them. But this is now what took off from his stories are all these stories, and they're fucking creepy. I was trying to decide if I should say that word or not, but hell, who cares? So, this is a story in 2016 in Vermont during a blizzard in literally the middle of nowhere. An elderly couple in their house, they heard some sounds of not loud knocks on their door. So they opened their door and they saw two children, a boy and a girl, and they were not dressed for cold weather. Like probably just a shirt and pants or something. And they seemed completely unfazed, not shivering, not anything. So they believe the black eyed children can really play off maternal instincts also. So they asked to come in, and they didn't make eye contact. They actually just stood in the doorway. And the couple didn't know what to do for a while, letting them in and just kind of standing there awkwardly. So the wife asked the children, would you like some hot cocoa? And they said back to her, quote, no, our parents will be here soon. Just, ugh, are you serious? You're in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, during a blizzard, and your mom knows where to pick you up? Like, I'm going to get so many chills reading these stories, and I've read them a gazillion times, for this podcast. But so the kids go settle on the couch. The wife does end up making them some hot cocoa, and the husband's trying to talk to them and ask them questions, but they refuse to answer. The wife comes in with the cocoa, and she's noticing that her cat is acting very, very weird. It's very scared and very, very angry with the children. Like, it is, pets have those instincts, you guys. It's crazy. So then the children ask, quote, may we please use the restroom? So the wife looked at the kids, and that's when she finally saw the eyes, just black as black can be. So she said, yes, here's the restroom. And the husband had passed by them when they were going to the restroom, and he comes to her and he has his hand covering his face. And the husband says to his wife, quote, did you see their eyes? And then the husband shows his hand, and it's just full of blood from just this massive nosebleed that will not stop. So then all of a sudden the power goes out in their house, and it's pitch black. They're in the middle of nowhere. And like they said, it turned as dark as the kids' eyes. Like, oh my God. So the wife starts going towards the restroom, and she was going to confront these kids. And all of a sudden the kids look at her at the end of the hall, and they say, quote, our parents are here. Just come on, these children. Ugh. So the kids leave the house, and they just left the door wide open. I'm assuming she came back. But because the door was wide open, the wife is looking out the door, and she notices there are two men at the end of her driveway. One was very tall and slender, and the wife waved, to be friendly and, make sure the kids are okay. And the two men and the children got in the car and just drove away. Very dark black car. And then a little later, after they left, the power came back on. So weird things started happening in their house. They had 4 cats. 3 of them went missing, and the 4th was found dead in a pool of its own blood. The husband continued getting these massive, ridiculous nosebleeds, and he finally went to the doctor, and he was diagnosed with aggressive skin cancer. And the wife, she also suffers these constant nosebleeds, and she didn't want to say a lot, but she just said she's in the worst conditions of her life, and she knows it's because of that night and those children. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm out. Okay, let's move on to some more stories. So, there is a legend in the UK, in 2014. It was on the front page of a newspaper, and there were actually 3 stories that ended up on the front page about sightings of the black-eyed children in a pub in Stratfordshire, sure, and this haunted pub. So some ghost hunters went in, and they believe that black-eyed children were extraterrestrials, vampires, or ghosts, and took these sightings at that haunted pub very, very seriously. There's also this, it kind of goes with the conspiracy theories, but people claim to see them when they're driving late at night on like an empty road, outside their window late at night, or even lurking in the shadows of their room. So that is reported when people are in episodes of sleep paralysis, or like waking in the middle of the night because they sensed something watching them. And it's like they see the children standing in like the corner of their room. And and they believe that these shadows that were throughout their room were these black-eyed children. Ugh. No thank you. No thank you. I always had this thing when I was younger. I hated the dark. I'm still not a big fan of the dark. But we would go play tag because my friend lived next to the golf course and lots of pine trees and stuff. And we would go play tag. And I swore I saw black shadows darting back and forth, and I like had this massive panic attack. I'm crying, screaming, and it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. So, blah, 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 blah. So there's some guys you guys need to check out. They're on YouTube. They're called the JK Bros, and they did a segment that is badass and so creepy. So these are the top 5 black-eyed children caught on camera. And so you want to go, if you're watching the episode, you want to go about 17 minutes in, because it has other stuff at the beginning, but the last part, they are doing all black-eyed children. These are so freaking creepy. So I'm going to start with story number 5. It is a woman on camera. So there is this man who believes that there is a certain sound that can summon black-eyed children. And he wants to do this to prove that they exist. So he sets his laptop up looking at his front door, and the laptop is going to play the tone all night long and while it's recording his front door. Night 1, nothing. Night 2, an outdoor light turns on, but still nothing. Night 3, nothing. Night 4, nothing. Night 5 is where it got very, very creepy. So, watching the footage, night 5, an outside light came on, and literally there is a woman. It looks like an older woman, and it's just her by herself, so there's not 2 of them, standing outside staring into the camera of the laptop. And she's literally just standing there staring. Disheveled hair, the dark eyes. It's so scary. And she stood there staring for over an hour on the porch, literally just standing there. So the man was awoken by a bunch of movement outside, and he went to check, and he found nothing except the gate to the house was left open. And he lives in an extremely secluded area. He does not have visitors. Again, like the last one, just middle of nowhere. So he actually, they showed him again in the third one. And this was recorded a week after his first video. So he stopped playing the tone because he got super freaked out. Just not what he is wanting to deal with now. But so he's driving along a road leading to his house, a long dirt road. And he swears that he thought he saw something go across the road in front of his car. He gets out, starts walking around, and just, nothing. Couldn't figure anything out. but he's recording the whole time. So he went home and reviewed the footage, and there's actually a person walking alongside the road in the brush, looking at him. It looks very similar to the same woman, disheveled hair and black eyes. It is so scary. I definitely check this episode out, guys. They did an amazing job, and they're funny, so it's great reacting with them. But like, I still have chills. Just, I watched it multiple times. It's so scary. Okay. So there was another one that it's like a photo bomb, but I wasn't impressed with it. Yeah, it's kind of weird because she, like, you can see it in the background, then she turns and covers it up and then comes back and it's gone. But I didn't think it was that scary. Oh my God. Another one, trail cams. There's a lot of trail cam video out there of black-eyed children. So if you don't know what a trail cam is, hunters put them up to see the activity in an area, to figure out if they want to go hunting there or if they need to switch to another place because there was no activity, stuff like that. So guys, definitely check out this video. The pictures are so creepy. So these trail cams are not just like on the side of the road. These hunters put them way in the deep woods. You know, they want to see the deer that are in there because there's a lot in there. And so they get this picture, and it's two deer. One is looking at the trail cam and the other is looking off to the side. And so when they zoomed out on the photo, there was literally a small child in a white gown just standing there while that one deer looked at her. No shoes on, and like the doe noticed her. And it's so freaking scary. Her eyes are dark and it's the worst. And then they show multiple ones of literally just children standing in the middle of the woods. Some have deer in it, some don't. And it's the creepiest thing, you guys. It's so creepy. And then the last one was a woman in UK. She snapped a picture of a black-eyed child in the woods. Very, 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 very creepy. And she kind of looks like she was in a tree, but this woman claims that she's still haunted and has constant nightmares because of that picture. Nope. I have a bunch of stories, but I'm gonna tell all of them because they are creepy and scary, and if you like that kind of thing, let's do it. So I'm gonna read these word for word. I did cite the website in my sources, and I cannot remember the name of the website right now, but yes. So first story is called Midnight Caller. So, quote, the whole thing. I almost feel like a dream. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything. Our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. It wasn't a huge concern initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. Sounds a bit silly, but that's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work for a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door, stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one we had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate, blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped towards me, and when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerism changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did, and outside were two kids. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21 and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde and she wore it long about mid-back with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-covered pull-over hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around three or four in the same style jeans and button-down ivory cardigan. The small one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to the one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward and I could see her eyes. I couldn't see her eyes. She said, quote, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, quote, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door. Lucy still cowering at my ankles, she kept talking. Quote, "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. Quote, "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door and I inched backwards, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back towards the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up my windows, locked the door, and sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them, the black-eyed children can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me, forget it. But this is lingering feelings of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door. This tells me otherwise. Whew. Just the part where she's like still calling to him or to her. No thanks. Nope. So here's another one. This one's a little shorter, and the title of it is "You Must Let Me In." On March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I'd never heard of anything having to do with black-eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside a hairdresser's in an old Chevy pickup, waiting for my mom to get her hair cut. About 15 minutes had passed, and I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of my parked car. At first, I thought I recognized him as one of my friends from school, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. It was not anyone I knew. At this point, I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of my car and just stares. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes to freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have never seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils black as the night sky. The boy whispers, quote, "You must let me in." And then I locked the car doors and ducked down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got into the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had come into the hairdresser's and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God she did. Oh, God. Are you kidding me? Damn. I have goosebumps. So, the last story is my favorite. But okay. A few more stories, guys. I promise. These are just... I love them. Stick with me. So, next one. Every story I've read about them is from someone who already knew about them. Last night was any other night. I was switching between listening to music and watching YouTube videos with one headphone in so I can hear my infant daughter if she cries. That way my wife can get a full night's sleep. She works at 4 a.m. at the hospital every day. When I decide to go lay down in the spare bed in the baby's room, just as I dozed off, I heard a thumping coming from the front porch. Startled at first, I opened my eyes wide and scanned the room, realizing it was most likely my cat scratching himself on the front porch. I dozed back off. Then again, the thumping. Damn cat, I got out of bed to run him off the porch only to see he wasn't there anymore. Now that I was up again, I wasn't the least bit tired. I figured I'll get some tea and check Facebook while I'm up. Maybe finish the web series I was watching on YouTube. A few minutes into the video, I felt the sudden urge to look up at the kitchen window. There they were. The tops of two short-statured people's heads cresting the stairs just above my window frame. The people were just short enough not see in the window, but I could see out. I heard no footsteps on my porch and my stomach turned. But the knock was a steady, hollow thump. The same thump I had just blamed on my cat. Deciding it was best not to answer, I shut my laptop and crept by the back door to the baby's room. I assumed it was some of the people from the low-income housing across the road from me that were high or hiding from the cops or maybe looking for my cousin who stays with me often and has many friends over there. The last thing I needed was to try to explain to two stoners that I was trying to sleep even though it was 2 a.m. It wasn't until I got to my daughter's room that the creepiness set in. The thump had moved from the kitchen to the bedroom windows. Both windows. A room apart, thumping in perfect time. These stoners were going to wake up my daughter, and if I didn't run them out now... Pissed off, I went out to the kitchen, unlocked the door, and opened the door, ready to run outside of the house and kick some little idiot's ass. It happened then. Standing there, looking up at me, were two 10 or 11-year-old boys. The feeling of dread and the smell of mold almost made me vomit. The smaller of the two then spoke. Quote, "May we use your telegraph?" Huh? I just stared blankly at these boys, horrified of what I then realized. Their eyes were pitch black. He asked again to use my telegraph? There wasn't a sound to be heard, no crickets chirping, no dogs barking, no cars driving by, nothing. I tried to play it cool and ignore the fact that he didn't say telephone or phone or cell, anything that would made any sense of the situation, and calmly replied, "I don't have service in my house, sorry." The expression on their faces turned to rage as I finished my sentence. Swiftly, I shut the door and locked it as quickly as I could, then stumbled back to protect my daughter. I picked her up from the crib and held her close. The fact that she didn't wake up freaked me out the most, but I managed to gather my senses enough to make sure she was still breathing and warm. Everything seemed okay with her. The thumping on the window was back. I dropped to the floor as close to the wall as I could and held my little girl in my arms and wept like a child. I felt helpless and afraid. I lied there for what felt like hours and hours, crying and shaking until I heard it, my wife's alarm clock. The thumping stopped the instant the alarm went off, and I crept into the master bedroom with the baby. "What's wrong with you?" my wife asked. "I just had a bad dream," is all I could mutter out. "Okay, well, give me the baby so I can feed her before work." I handed my wife the baby. She fed her like any normal day. I turned on every light in the house and made coffee for her. For some reason, just having her awake calmed my nerves enough to pretend like nothing happened. I walked her out to the car nervously with the baby in my arms. I asked her not to leave until I walked back in the house. She was put off by the request, but did so to humor me. Once I was safely in the house, I locked the door again, and in the house I sat horrified until she got home. I insisted we go to the next town over and stay the weekend at my brother's house, and here I sit horrified while she sleeps in the guest room with my daughter. Wondering why they stopped when the alarm went off? I think I know the answer. I was aware of black-eyed children. She wasn't. Every story I've read about them is from someone who already knew about them. Maybe, just maybe, knowledge of them existing is the only reason they visited. That's so scary, especially with a baby. Oh my gosh. I still have a couple stories. So if you're still in it, thanks for listening. If you're not, hey, just, you're good. I'm reading them more for me, I guess. So this one's titled, "No, You Won't Be Calling Anybody." The incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small-town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved cross-country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of this situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is this kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken by an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee-length black leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. The sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd, and even more odd, he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said no, closed the door, and slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied, and attempted to close the door, but before the door could shut, he puts his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges. He looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" "Fuck that," I reply, albeit a little confused. "Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police." He takes a moment to let this information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I force the door closed, lock it, and call out to my wife. She is scared shitless, hiding in the bedroom. All jacked up on adrenaline, I rip the curtains back to look out the window next to the door. He's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out on the patio and check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. That was fucked up, I think to myself, and as I turn to enter the house, I notice a half-eaten apple lying on the ground. It scares me when they get aggressive, because that's when it gets like your brain just starts going crazy and you're like, I don't know what to do. Holy shit, what I do? And yeah. Okay, I believe this is the last one as I scroll through this. I think it is, and it's a good one. I put it last for a reason. So, last one here. Okay. Oh, I keep going past it. So the title of this one is "Don't Go Out at Night and Always Beware the Devils." So reading the stories, I had always been a skeptic. Stories, alleged first-hand experiences, haunting possessions, they were all well and good for a quick chill, a cheap thrill, something I read to get my heart rate up. Getting scared can be fun sometimes as long as you don't overdo it. Just a little something silly to get worked up about. In my lurking in books and on numerous sites on the internet, credible or not, I've come across many a story or accounts about ghosts, demons, the Jersey Devil, you name it. Recently, I found my way into stories about the black-eyed kids. No, these children did not get a black eye from a fight. I don't believe there would be a soul out there with a backbone to try and attack these kids. In light of all this, I have always been a very fact-based person. If its existence was not apparent or the existence of the thing in question was not testable and verifiable to me, it did not exist. However, one night, one long, terrifying night, which still haunts me to this very day, showed me the proof required to open my eyes and mind. My story begins when I left my mom's house and had gone over to visit because my father, her husband of 63 years, recently passed away, and my mom wasn't taking it too well. I knew she needed support from her loved ones, and I was more than willing to go visit and keep her company, but it was getting late. My mom lives in the suburbs. Tidy lawn, plenty of neighbors, paved roads, and even though it was nearly 11 p.m. when I left, the streets were extremely lit by the streetlights, who always had your safety and ease of mind and heart. These lights only lit the road, though, and glancing across the street, the houses were cast in an eerie shadow. Even a rather safe, charming little neighborhood can seem spooky and uninviting when cast in shadow. I admit, I was terribly chilled. Sliding into my car, I revved the engine and waved to my mom, who was standing in the doorway, wrapped comfortably in a warm shawl. She waved back, her old and fragile arms shaking. I saw her mouth, quote, "Be careful," and I smiled, backing out of the driveway. I turned out of the neighborhood, deciding to take the back way, the shorter way home tonight. In hindsight, that might have not been a good idea. I live significantly ways out in the middle of the country in the old farmhouse I grew up in, which my father had left in my name when he and Mom had moved out into a place smaller, more easy to care for, and affordable. He, my father, had always told me growing up, quote, "Don't go out at night and always beware the devils." He was a strong believer in anything and everything paranormal, a very superstitious man, and I always had to resist the urge to laugh at his words, but I knew he meant well. Driving down the dark roads, there were no streetlights, and the half-assessed paved road was cracked and filled with potholes. The fields on either side of the road were empty, just blank stretches of overgrown grass and unattended shrubbery. The dark outline of the trees of the woods could be seen looming all the way across the fields on the shadowy horizon. One might have even seen a deer or two once in a while in those fields, but not tonight. The moon offered little light, and the sky rolled with dark, threatening clouds, ready to burst with rain or a storm at any moment. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the low grumble of thunder sounded, heavy and long. However, no rain fell just yet, much to my pleasure. I hate driving at night and in the rain, and putting those two together would end badly. I just knew it. Accompanied only by the occasional roll of thunder, I start to feel a bit anxious. I can't explain it. I just feel shaken up. Probably because it was night and it could start raining, or maybe I'd been reading too many ghost stories and legends, and tonight seemed to reflect the mood of the stories I read almost obsessively. To try and calm myself, I flicked on my old car radio and turned the old-fashioned knob back and forth, slowing down a bit as I attempted to find a station that came in clearly. Nothing doing. Weird. There was a broadcasting tower right near here. It usually came in perfectly, clear as day. But still nothing. The white noise and the static of the blank stations was doing nothing to appease my anxiety. I gripped the steering wheel tightly as more thunder boomed from the sky. Aggravated, I forcefully shut off the radio, gritting my teeth. Glancing down at the dashboard, I noticed I was nearly out of gas. Groaning, I searched the road for a sign of gas. As I was scanning the side of the road, I noticed from the corner of my eye 2 figures walking on the side of the road, shrouded in shadow. They were walking slowly, one turned around, walking backwards, his or her thumb sticking out. I felt compelled to pull over, give them a ride, and I found my hands turning the wheel slightly, but I pulled back, realizing how stupid it would be of me to accept 2 random strangers in my car in the middle of the night on a backcountry road. I sped up and past them, trying not to look at them as I did so, though I felt oddly intrigued by them. As I focused on the road ahead, it started drizzling, dropping my mood another level or two. Along with the rain, the thunder seemed louder, closer as the storm moved in. A few seconds passed until I gave in to my compulsion to look at the two figures, and I glanced in my rearview mirror. It seemed as if the two were walking faster, and the one no longer had his thumb out, but had it been my imagination, how would I be able to tell if they were walking faster or not? It was rainy and dark. Looking back at the road, I almost missed the sign that alerted me of a gas station shop up ahead. A sigh of relief passed my lips, and I slowed down, looking for any indication of the stop, pushing the thoughts of the two figures from my head. Soon I was pulling into the gas station slowly as the rain started to pick up. The store was closed, but luckily they had 24-hour gas pump service. That was good for me, as if they had not, I'd run out a few miles more down the road. I shut off my car and hesitantly shuffled out of the metal shell and glanced over my shoulder, still not able to shake the nervous feeling that had manifested inside me earlier that night. I stood under the light of the overhang, trying to figure out how to work the pump, which seemed so overcomplicated in the dim light, and with my mind not being able to focus on this simple task. The rain picked up more, heavier and louder against the concrete of the gas stop as I finally was able to get the gas pump into my car, forcing my hand to stop its shaking. I had a horrible feeling that my shaking wasn't just because of the bitterly cold air. Suddenly, the overhang lights of the gas station started flickering wildly, a couple going out altogether. It seemed as if the temperature dropped 20 degrees in a few seconds. As I glanced around, a sinking feeling started to blossom in my stomach. As if it was in slow motion, I turned around, facing back towards the road, the long, lonely road, and saw what I expected to see there. But even as much as I knew what I'd see, I still felt the drop in my stomach, the color draining from my face, and I breathed a sharp, cold breath, forcefully as it almost caught in my throat. Across the street, the two figures were standing, facing me. They started crossing the street slowly but surely, and I fumbled with the gas pump. It had only been a few moments, but it seemed as if the gas pump was taking its precious time. I was shaking hard now as thunder boomed once more, and I looked back up. The figures were now at the entrance to the gas stop, and my breath was quick and shallow as I blindly shoved the pump back into its holder, not being able to tear my eyes away from the figure. As they drew closer, I became more frantic, even though now, as they walked into the flickering light of the overhang, I saw they were just two teenagers. They looked ragged and frigid and soaked from the rain. I straightened up a bit, still terrified, but another compulsive feeling, similar to the one I experienced in the car, was bubbling, and I felt obligated to talk to these two, though I insisted to myself to just drive away, not risking anything. They were extremely close now, at the next pump, when I slid into my car, shaking wildly, and fumbled for my keys, cursing myself as I dropped them on the floor. Leaning down, I swiped them up and sat back up, a cold, sickening feeling as I came face to face with one of the teens, who had his hand on my window, knocking slowly but forcefully. I rolled down the window a bit, just a bit, no bigger than to allow maybe a small child's hand through. Before I spoke, he spoke first, and the other figure standing in the background still, but I could see something of a grin there on her pale face. Quote, "Can you give us a ride into town? We missed the bus and don't have a ride." He spoke slowly, and something about his voice made me shiver. A cold chill swept down my spine, and I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Clearing my throat, I glanced at the dashboard and at the keys in my hand. "I'm sorry, but I'm not going into town," I stuttered, keeping my eyes down, not at the kids. However, the teenager knocked harsher and made me jump a little as he insisted another time for a ride. I told him no once more and looked up, trying to seem intimidating, which seems silly, trying to seem intimidating to a child, but a horrible, chilling sight greeted me. I looked the kids right in the eyes and gasped sharply, my back hitting my seat as I went to back away. He had eyes, oh, he did, but they were blacker than the night, pitch black. No discernible pupils and no white whatsoever showing. Pure black, deep, brooding, and surprisingly intriguing. But my fear got the better of me, and I quickly turned the key to my engine and revved it to life. I thanked God, which I never ever done before tonight. My car had not stalled and went to pull away, and the kid banged on my window with a pale fist, screaming for a ride. I took off speedingly down the road, apologizing to my father again and again. I had laughed at him, never took his warning seriously. After a few more minutes, I pulled into my driveway and right into my lawn, in front of my porch. I didn't want to spend any more time outside than I had already had and jumped from the car, leaving the car door open and ran inside, slamming the door and locking it, even going as far as to put a chain in front of the door in case someone or something tried to get it. Sinking into the chair in front of the door, I shivered uncontrollably and started to cry, hiding my face in my hands as two dark figures stood at the end of my driveway. Ah! It's so creepy. I love black-eyed kids, but oh my gosh, if I ever experienced that in my life, I would shit a brick, and I can only imagine. But no thank you. I like learning about you. I like hearing the stories, but please don't haunt me or come after me. I don't answer my door anyways, ring doorbell. But even like a lot of these people, they didn't talk about if they had a doorbell or a camera or anything. But can you imagine like the post that I posted on Monday of the kids at the front door? Ugh. I'm glad I picked that picture because it was so creepy. But yeah, that is finally the end of Black-Eyed Children, Black-Eyed Kids, BEK, whatever you'd like to call them. So, such a crazy story. I've been so pumped about. Like, it's my favorite spooky story out there for sure. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys could go on to wherever you find your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, and rate and review, that would be amazing. And on Apple, you only have to listen for a minute to it count as a listen. So if you guys just want to listen for a minute, great. I don't care. And then on Spotify, I think you have to listen for like 5 or 10 minutes to even rate and review. So, first 5 minutes, if you like me, just go ahead and review. But I greatly appreciate it. It definitely helps get the podcast out there and bring in more listeners. And I appreciate everyone who has been listening so far. I've gotten some amazing feedback. Everyone likes my voice. They say that I am very soothing, that I should do like something on like the Calm app type of thing where you read a story or something. But I appreciate that. That makes me feel good. But yeah, I just appreciate all of you so much. We are going to be heading to Florida next week to visit Yesteryear Village. And if you haven't heard of that one, it is super creepy, but super cool. It's a bunch of different houses from different eras, and it's crazy haunted. So very pumped about that. Yeah, episode 27, guys. I'm so excited. I have so much planned for this, and I'm just overwhelmed. So yeah, again, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, all there. And you can support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. And make sure to go on and rate and review. That's always huge. And if it's snowing near you and getting cold, stay warm for sure. I'm so pumped that winter is here. I was going to put Christmas stuff out, but I'm not going to do it. We're going to have friends coming for Thanksgiving from Colorado. If you don't know, I have moved all over the place, but I'm native to Colorado, and I haven't seen my friends in so long, and they're coming for Thanksgiving, and I'm so overwhelmed and excited. So we're going to have house at normal looking, and then we'll put up the craziness of Christmas. But yeah, but if you decorate for Christmas, go for it. Who cares? Like, Thanksgiving is a weird holiday to me. Just, yeah. Oh, and fun fact, I keep seeing on TikTok about why chainsaws were invented. I finally looked it up. I definitely recommend looking it up because it's very weird. And I was shocked to hear why chainsaws were invented. Anyways, okay, I should go. I'm starving and cold, so it's probably soup time because I love soup. All right, thank you all again for everything that you guys do to support me and the podcast. And you're amazing. I love you all. Have an amazing week, you guys. Bye.